Okay, welcome to our Baxter City Council meeting. It's time to begin. Trust that everybody had a safe and enjoyable 4th of July holiday. It was a little bit different, but hopefully we still enjoyed time with our families, and looks like we all came back safe and sound the way it looks here right now. So the first thing we'll do is roll call. City Administrator.
Here. Cross.
Here.
Holman.
Here.
Licio.
Here.
Habit.
Here.
And Olson.
Here. Okay, at this time, we'd ask you to rise to recite the pledge to the flag with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. First thing on our agenda tonight is we have a presentation from Camp Ripley from General Cruz. We welcome you to our council meeting, and we'll turn it over to you at this time.
All right, thank you for having me. Hopefully everybody can hear me, and if you can't, yell out, scream, throw a book at me, something like that. But truly unique times that we're in. Normally we do these briefings in March and April, but we were delayed with our current situation with the COVID virus. And so I'm excited to come and meet you here in your July meeting and give you an update of what's happening in the summer at Camp Ripley. So we got a couple months of that left, but I hope you have my slide deck in front of you in some manner. I'm going to refer to the page numbers that I'm on. And so I'll go to page number 2. There we go. So you've seen this before. Our Camp Ripley's mission statement remains the same. And obviously, like every good organization, we need to understand what our ground pinning is. And so my mission statement continues to be to provide the best facilities that I can to provide the best training environment for our soldiers as they prepare for our nation's worst day, as well as for our soldiers and our state agency partners as they prepare for our state's worst day. And I think in this last month, in early May and June, or late May and June, we saw a great response from your National Guard as we helped with the civil unrest in Minneapolis and kind of restored that. So all the training that the guys and gals had to do that kind of work, they did here at Camp Ripley. And finally, the third leg of my mission statement is what we're doing tonight. And that's to attempt to inform the public and to be the best neighbor we can to our communities that surround Camp Ripley. So go to slide 3, please. The next couple of slides, like before, are some picture slides showing the leadership. Minnesota National Guard is still led by Major General John Jensen. He is such a phenomenal leader that he got nominated by the president to become a 3-star general and go become the director of the Army National Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C. And so that headquarters provides resources, funnels money from Congress down to the states. And General Jensen is going to become the 3-star general in charge of that headquarters and essentially providing guidance and resource to all 54 states and territories. So pretty prestigious post for him. We're still waiting for Congress to confirm him. They were supposed to do that before they went on their 4th of July recess. So he's still in place here in Minnesota. And if you had a chance to see him during any of the press conferences that the governor had regarding the civil disturbance, you learned what a phenomenal leader he is. Below him is Brian Soper, our Command Sergeant Major. He's new on the picture book as well. Joined us this fall. He's originally from the Mankato area, left Minnesota to work nationally for about 10 years and had the opportunity to come back to be our state command senior enlisted leader. Next slide, please. Our 34th Infantry Division has seen some turnover as well. And so in the upper picture there is Brigadier General Mike Wickman, who's the new division commander, and his CSM is Michael Whitehead. What's significant with Mike Whitehead is he's also the national president of the DAB. So we continue to have linkage at a lot of different organizations, both in Minnesota and nationally. And if you go to the next slide, please, slide 5. Finally, the Camp Ripley leadership. I'm probably the constant picture there that hasn't changed for you. This is my 3rd year being the senior commander at Camp Ripley. Colonel Brian Melton, who was our garrison commander, retired this fall after he returned from Jordan. And so he's been replaced by Colonel Josh Seimer. And we replaced CSM Matt Erickson, who was our garrison command sergeant major, with CSM Marcus Erickson. So we saved some money on signs because we just had to change the first name a little bit there. Next slide. So ladies, gentlemen, this slide once again talks about our economic impact. And for 2019, it was very similar to 2018 in overall economic impact. We're right around that $260 million of total impact, with around $120 million of actual revenues. Most of that continues to be payroll and DOD retirees that are getting paid in our community. The difference between year to year, as I always brief, is from the projects, and we've got a decrease in projects in 2019. And we kind of had a spike in 2017 with all the money we received for the replacement of the buildings that were torn down by the hurricane or by the tornado. And this year in 2019, we took receipt of the last 2 buildings of that renovation, that urban renewal that we had. So go to the next slide, please, slide 8. Just some of the 2019 highlights. Once again, we hovered right around the 400,000 man days a year for military training, plus another 60,000 man days for state and local partners. You can see that the state and local partners continue to increase. Last year, we had about 17,000. Next year, when we come to brief you, these numbers will be down significantly with the impact of COVID, but we're doing very well. The 2nd Brigade from Iowa last year came for 3 weeks to do their XCTC. They brought almost 3,000 soldiers up here. And they also brought a 3-star general who's the commander of 1st Army to come and see their training. So I had the opportunity to host Lieutenant General Thomas James at my house for dinner and talk to him about how important the National Guard is and what a gem Camp Ripley is for the Army. Throughout the year, we hosted a lot of tank and Bradley firing. The new normal for us is our Armor Brigade combat team has to train in the winter so that they're prepared to spend their summer going someplace else. Last year, they went to Fort Hood for 3 weeks. This summer, they're at NTC. And so we produced a lot more noise this winter than normal. In February, specifically, we did a lot of gunnery for the 1st Brigade. We also had our first annual Planning for the Future event. We invited the Ojibwe tribe schools to bring their high school kids over to Camp Ripley, and we had a cultural exchange. We had about 50 soldiers out there with about 50 youth, and they talked to us about some of their culture, how important their drum is in their culture. We also collectively planted some native grasses together to replenish some of our prairies, and had a recruiting station and of course lunch. And it was a very successful event and gave what the tribal leaders continue to ask us for as an opportunity for their youth. And so we'll continue to do that. We weren't able to do it this summer, but it's on our list of things to do as soon as we can figure out how to gather again. We also have a very important medical log warehouse on the installation. It is now managing the medical supplies for all 54 states and territories in the nation. What that means is they're able to, through their prime vendor, procure medical supplies for our medical kits, our bags that we give our medics, as well as our big kits that are right around in our ambulances or in our hospitals. And they're able to replenish and refill those kits very economical, way cheaper than we can get it through the Army system. And it's a great benefit for the Minnesota National Guard, but for the National Guard family overall. And finally, on the bottom there, our fire department received 3 new trucks. I think that brings them up to about 15 trucks. We almost have 1 truck per firefighter. And but what that's really done for us, and what I really want to highlight, is we signed a joint powers agreement with the local fire departments in Morrison County. Morrison County has assigned us a stretch of the 371 corridor, specifically around Fort Ripley as a primary response area. And what that's given us is an ability to help the community. And that area didn't have dedicated fire service, and so they had higher insurance rates because of it. And now with that joint powers agreement, we're able to respond off post. And as you can see, in 2019, we had about 225 responses off post. Most of them were for our Gold Cross ambulance that's stationed here that our fire department also mans, but some of them were fire calls. Next slide, please. Just like all organizations, the current deadly virus, COVID-19, has had an effect on the National Guard. For 3 months now, we've learned how to do what we call distributed drills, where we've left our soldiers at their home of record and allowed them to do exactly what we're doing right here, Zoom in on meetings and do training collectively, but distributed, as well as do some hands-on PT and some things like that. So it's been a pretty successful ability to keep our readiness up. We also on the installation have had an effect across the installation. First off, we obviously had to decrease our manning of all our billeting structures in about half so we could social distance our soldiers. We've gone to great lengths with cleaning and taking care of our facilities so that they're sanitized. We've hosted about every month a Red Cross blood drive on the installation. And we pushed over 6 million of medical supplies out into the community. Specifically, the National Guard was the first source for some backup PPE for our hospitals back in early April. Finally, right now we are going through a process where we're testing over 4,000 Minnesota National Guardsmen as they flow through here to go to the National Training Center. And so we started that right before the 4th of July. And so those troops will start to leave here in the next 2 to 3 days. What that's consisted of is the Department of Army brought in two mobile labs that allows them to produce COVID-19 positive or negative results anywhere between 3 hours and 8 hours a time. So we can test all our soldiers, kind of keep them separated and find the positives. And we're stripping the positives out of the formation, and they're occupying right now a section of our installation that we've set up to be an isolation support facility. And so those soldiers will now quarantine in that facility for 14 days while they fight their way through the virus. And so currently right now, I believe I have about 30 kids that are positive that are being quarantined in that facility, and another probably 20 that are there due to contact tracing. So we found that that's the way we keep the rest of the formation clean and protected, because they're going to a very austere environment in California, and we really hope that they don't have to deal with the training distractor having sick kids with COVID. Next slide. So some pictures of some of the new construction that we've taken into our inventory this last year. The two buildings on the right are the last two buildings from the active nature event. In fall of 16, we had a tornado roam through and do some urban renewal on Camp Ripley. Knocked down about 5 of our buildings. 2 of them were rather significant and big buildings, and it took a while to rebuild them. The one in the upper right is a very large barracks. It's 2 stories all the way around, so we've gained some space there. On the left, on the upper left, are a picture of the new buildings that we're building to replace our rows of tin huts. So if you come to Camp Ripley today, you would find that our area 5 is under renovation, and we're installing what we call long houses, row upon row of them, to replace the tin huts that are in that area. We see that as probably about a 15 to 20 year process, because we're only able to finance probably 2 of those buildings a year. But overall, that's the long range building plan of how do we replace our almost 100-year-old tin huts. Next slide, please. So on slide 10, we have we have some of the other new construction that you'll see on the installation. The upper left is a picture of our new fire department. Like I said, full of brand new fire trucks. And we're eventually going to get to the point here where we'll add another building onto that. That'll be their admin space. Below that is a picture of some of the electrical generators that we've got going on our installation. We're parking new backup generators at all our substations. That project will hopefully, the last generator will get set this summer yet. And then the last phase of that is to buy the control software, what they call the SCADA software, that's going to allow us then to completely take Camp Ripley off the electrical grid. And we'll be able to live off of our 65-acre solar field during the day and have backup generators in case of that national need that if the grid goes down for some odd reason, we will continue to be an island in the storm for our state. Below, on the lower right, we also renovated our AFES, the convenience slash retail store on the installation, and we were complete PX remodel there as well. Next slide, please. So as we look at some of our 2020 scheduled training, we're done with June and we're working our way through July right now. In June, we had a lot of aviation flying, a lot of helicopters training in June, as well as we've seen a tremendous amount of C-130 flights in the last couple of months. Their inability to fly in March and April has really turned into a lot of training flights here in June and July. And also in July, around the 4th of July or right before, we pulled 10 trains worth of equipment out of the installation on our rail. That equipment's all on its way to Fort Irwin for the National Training Center rotation that the 1st Brigade's doing. In August, we will have some artillery firing. The 151 Field Artillery will be up here for their annual training. All 10 loads of trains, or 10 trains loaded with all that equipment, comes back the end of August. And our 1st Brigade, as soon as they unload their equipment, will enter a period of time in September, October, and November where they'll be doing a lot of gunnery, because they have to complete all their gunnery again before, they'll have to complete all their gunnery again before they deploy here in January. The next slide talks a little bit about our Air Force. As I've talked to you before, Minnesota has both an Air Guard and Air Reserve wing, and they do a lot of maneuvers here recently, almost daily, as well as their ground forces come and train. So I don't know if you can see the slides anymore. If not, Todd, yeah, I didn't think so. But hopefully you're not missing a lot that you haven't seen in other years, but we'll talk about them a little bit here. The next slide, slide 13, talks about our Camp Ripley partners. And we've still continued to have 4 main state level services that are here on Camp Ripley. The DNR continues to have their their DNR conservation officer training here at Camp Ripley, as well as the State Patrol had their academy here. The State Patrol's academy ran from January through April. They commissioned their officers about a month early, and they did that because they were trying to avoid COVID, so they worked through the weekend. I'm pretty sure they were glad they had all those officers when they had all the riots to take care of later in May and early June. HSCM continues to be housed here with some permanent staff as they continue to do their Homeland Security Emergency Management training on the installation. And finally, MnDOT has some permanent presence, specifically as they ramp up for their snowplow driving training. Unfortunately, this year they've canceled their annual driver training event, which is normally in September and October. And so you and I both hope for a mild winter because our snowplow drivers will probably have a little less training. But they have promised they'll come back next fall. The next slide talks a little bit about some of our community outreach. Camp Ripley in September of 19 hosted its annual open house, and we did that as a celebration this last year of the Air Force. And we coupled that with the reveal of the last painting at the Veterans, Minnesota Veterans Cemetery that Charles Kapsner had been commissioned to do. That painting was a celebration of the Air Force. And so it was fitting that our open house also identify and celebrate the contributions of the Minnesota Air Guard to the Air Force. We talked a little bit about our planning for the future event as well. We continue to have a lot of other festivals and events to bring in children to learn about the environment around Camp Ripley, as well as our annual gift tag and food drive. This year, the food drive brought almost about 800 pounds of food to the Morrison County Little Falls food shelf. So that was a great response by our on-base folks as well. COVID's had a big effect on our hunting seasons this spring. We weren't able to do our disabled American veteran turkey hunt or our trolling for the troops event. And actually we had a meeting this afternoon where we have decided, we originally had postponed the trolling for the troops event, but we've decided to cancel it for the year. And we hope that we can re-energize it next June again. The next slide, slide 15, talks about our environmental program. The highlight there is, once again, our environmental program was a DOD level awardee for the Natural Resource Conservation Award. I like to highlight the fact that they continue to win that award every other year, and they win it because of the quality of the environmental program we have on Camp Ripley. And when you consider that they're competing against the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines, and the Army, and all their active duty posts across the nation and the world, it's pretty phenomenal that the Camp Ripley environmental team continues to win at that level. The next slide talks about some of the environmental oversight we have. We have a lot of different organizations that come to Camp Ripley and make sure that we are continue to be good stewards of our environment. But the federal side, the EPA and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency at the state side are examples of some of those agencies that are here constantly. All right, so the slide deck's back. If you'd advance about 5 slides, please.
I apologize there, General. We had an internet blackout here at City Hall. We are just getting back on board, so give us 1 second.
Well, the good news is I've been going on without you. So if you get a chance, you can advance the slide a couple times.
Will do. Thank you.
We've talked that one. Next slide. And we talked about that. Next slide. And we talked about that. And we just finished that slide. So I like to highlight though. All right, I'm back. I apologize. So we can't have all those partnerships without great partners across the state. And the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources, Bowser, is one of those great partners, as well as Nature Conservancy. Todd joined me this morning as we talked about how all those partners came together to purchase the 718 acres that Potlatch wanted to sell. I'm incredibly thankful to the Baxter community that they were committed to help buying a portion of that. And us being able to contribute ACUB into that to cut that deal and make it work was incredibly important. And so I love to highlight the fact that we also have internships here going on throughout the summer. So Central Lakes College and the St. Cloud State University both have interns here working with my world-class environmentalists. And it's fun to see those young kids learning about their future occupation. Yesterday I was talking to one that was sorting through a whole pile of mole traps as he was getting ready to go out and trap some moles down in our downrange for some reason. Next slide, please. This spring we had a very good controlled prescribed burn program again. We burned almost 15,000 acres of Camp Ripley, and I don't think our public around us knew we even did it. All the acreages in orange were lands that we burned to do what we call hazard reduction burns. We want to burn all that area off so that when the soldiers are training this summer, they don't catch the grass on fire and us have to fight a wildland fire that ensues. And then the stuff in brown is stuff that we call mission enhancement burns. That's terrain that we're burning off, that we're trying to change the vegetation on it. And so pretty important that we're able to get those burns in as well. And it was a great spring for burning, mainly because my fire department normally has to fight for finding the days that it can have dedicated time to do burning around Army training. And with no Army training occurring in March and April, they were able to complete this task pretty rapidly. Next slide. And finally, we talked a little bit about it 2 slides ago, but the ACOV and Sentinel Landscape program continues to be very successful for Camp Ripley as we continue to pump money into perpetual easements on land to keep the land in its current usage and not have it have a chance of getting developed. So the land that we were able to work with Baxter City and Sullivan Township on to acquire the latest piece of potlatch land was pretty important acquisition. We celebrated that the last couple days. Today, we pumped over $42 million into acquisitions of easements around Camp Ripley. And that buffer in general is about 3 miles from the Camp Ripley perimeter, but it does move in and out based on some land contouring as well. We still have about 200 plus interested landowners around us that are waiting for us to get funding to bring their land into that piece. This last year in 19, we successfully asked for some SAMs or some Lessard SAMs Outdoor Heritage Council funds, and obviously that helped us with the acquisition of the potlatch land as well. So it continues to be a very successful program for us. And the last slide is a picture of my amazing team that helps me every day run this amazing installation. And I couldn't do it without them, and I'm very proud of each and every one of them. And right now, I'll open myself up to answering whatever questions you want to throw at me, and we'll go from there.
Council, any questions of the general? I have a curiosity question. In your job description, you're the assistant adjutant. Were you?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to be involved in the St. Paul, Minneapolis stuff, or?
Well, I was involved. I spent one night without sleep. We got the call from the governor on, well, the tag called me on Thursday morning after the Wednesday night riots and said, hey, we're going to have to mobilize some MP companies. And if we're going to put them kids in harm's way, I want them armed. And so I was involved the first day in making sure that we could push some small arms ammunition down to the Twin Cities area. After Friday night, when a lot of the city burned and the governor decided to mobilize the whole National Guard, that really became a night without sleep for a lot of leaders across the Minnesota, including myself. We had about 4 battalions of soldiers in and around Camp Ripley that we shoved through here. And so they did all their RSOI, what we have to onboard them as state employees when they go on state active duty. So they have to fill out a bunch of paperwork, and we got to make sure that they're medically fit so that we're not accepting any, long-term health effects for the state. And then we had to push them down into the city. So I was involved with that in my role as General Jensen's assistant. But I didn't have to leave Camp Ripley. So everybody else got to sleep on a cot. I got to go home at night. So.
Well, I didn't mean to drag us off course here, but I just was kind of curious to how, with your title there, how that would involve you. So it's
yeah.
Council, any other questions? And well, as always, we appreciate you coming and enlightening us, and we appreciate the great relationship we do have with you. It's been beneficial to both of us. We've come out very, very well on all of our dealings with you, and we just appreciate it. Hope to continue that. So. Keep up the good work down there.
It's in my strategic plan to couple with Baxter whenever I can. So thank you for your efforts. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, everyone. Have a great meeting. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. We'll move forward then. Did we go off again here?
We're good.
I've got a blank screen here, so. Can you hear me though?
I can hear and see you and
Okay.
the agenda.
Let's keep going. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay. Any public comments?
There were none received.
None received. Okay, then we'll move forward. The following items are considered non-controversial by staff and are recommended to be read and passed in one motion. Any council person, staff, citizen, or meeting attendee can request one or more items be pulled from the council agenda, and the item will be pulled and addressed immediately after the passage of the consent agenda. Otherwise, the following items will be passed in one motion. A, approve city council minutes from June 16th, 2020. B, approve the payment of bills and finance report. C, approve the Brainerd Baxter Fast Pitch Softball Association use agreement. D, adopt resolution 2020-039, approving and authorizing the execution of an addendum to the Glen LLC development agreement and related documents. E, approve issuance of liquor license for the period of July 8th, 2020 through June 30th, 2021 for China Garden. F, approve entering into a service agreement with Productive Alternatives, Inc. G, appoint election judges for the August 11th, 2020 primary election and November 3rd, 2020 general election.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Mark.
Second.
Second by Connie. All in favor, roll call, I guess.
Ross,
Aye.
Holman,
Yes.
Licio,
yes,
Babbitt,
Yes.
and Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Then number 9, other business, deny Northern Lake Senior Living request signage petition. Brad?
Yes, as council is aware, we received a petition from the Northern Lakes Senior Living residents, and Trevor Walter, our Public Works Director, did bring it to the Utilities Commission and has a recommendation for the council. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Walters.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just a little background. We took the petition to Utilities Commission at the last meeting. Actually, the meeting before. We held it over because with the COVID-19, we can't have the people right at the meeting, so we didn't get a lot of public input. So then we went back and did some letter writing and stuff on the petition. But to give you a little background, we do have a sign policy that the city council has put in place for the city of Baxter. We approved it back in September of 2013. So it's been in place for almost 7 years. And a little background of these types of signs, such as watch deer crossing, geese crossing, bear crossing, slow children at play signs, watch for children signs, are not recognized by the state of Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the manual that everybody goes by in the state of Minnesota. It's been proven to hold up in court on a lot of cases. MnDOT produced the manual many years ago. I don't know the exact dates on when the manual actually first come out for the first time, but it's been in place for several decades. And it's a legal sign manual that MnDOT produced. And those signs of that type are just not recognized by the manual. And in our sign policy, we listed why we don't go with those types of signs. There is 4 criteria in our sign policy. I won't read them, but they're there. And we did take and tell the association that did put in the petition, you know, about our sign policy, sent them a copy of it, showed them the reasons. It is a concern. There is a lot of geese on Excelsior Road this year. Last year they were on Cypress. So they move around. So Utilities Commission, took it serious. I mean, we got wildlife all over the city, but then they turned to the policy and denied the petition based on the policy. A little more background on the sign policy. One of the reasons that the sign policy was put in place about 7 years ago was because of the retroreflectivity laws in the state of Minnesota, which is the reflectivity of the material on the signs. And one of the recommendation, of course, is to eliminate a bunch of the signs that are not needed. We took down over 100 signs in the city, took them down because of their new sign policy. And what that did is it helped on the budget, of course, to take and keep up with the retroreflectivity law. And we change our signs out for reflectivity every 12 years, according to the policy. We go with the manufacturer's warranty of the reflectivity material used on the signs. A little background, Utilities Commission did, I mean, they took it serious. But like they said, we be putting up signs all over town. I mean, deer is just as big a problem as the geese crossing right now on Excelsior Road. And then how do you control exactly where the animals cross at any given time too? So the background, then they come back and recommended denial of the petition.
Okay, thank you, Council. Any questions of Trevor? Seeing none, then we will need a motion to go along with that, Brad?
Yes, we do.
Okay, look for a motion.
Your Honor, I'd move to accept the recommendation of the Utilities Commission to deny the sign request.
Motion by Holman,
Second.
second by Cross. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Cross,
Aye.
Holman,
Yes.
Licio,
yes,
Abbott,
Yes.
and Olson.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Moving on to council comments, Commission, Councilmember Licio.
a couple of things. I had the opportunity to run into a family this past week who were here vacationing from Arizona. And their family had the choice of going to Maui or this part of Minnesota, and they chose this part of Minnesota. And they said, hands down, it was better than any other vacation they'd been on, family of 5. And their sole mission that day was to support locally small-owned businesses. And so I had the opportunity to direct them to some places, but they were just over the moon about the area. So that was really nice to hear. And then also, I really want to extend gratitude to the road crews that are out there working in this heat. Oh my goodness, just thank you to all of the public works employees. They're so appreciated.
Yeah. Good, thanks. Zach?
I have nothing this time.
Okay, thank you. Holman?
Your Honor, Council, I too would just give a hats off to all staff. I know it's a full deployment to manage a holiday weekend. I thought our city looked spectacular, parks, trails, roadways. When we all saw and experienced the traffic that started early Wednesday throughout the weekend, it was just pretty amazing to see that volume of people coming to the lakes area, seeing Baxter as probably a gateway to that. Very, very proud of the work our city staff are doing and continue to do.
Thank you. Cross?
Yeah, I echo those comments. The other thing is just, again, I hate to have to bring it up again, but patience, just continuing to ask the community for patience to get through this and deal with those large crowds and deal with the fact things aren't open the way they should necessarily be open right now. And we'll get through it, and just thank you for your patience.
Good, yeah, thank you for that too. Kind of a segue into what I wanted to talk about. I got a phone call towards the end of last week, before the weekend, from a lady about a 20-minute conversation, very, very sincere, a very nice conversation. But she's very, very concerned with what is and isn't happening. And she was encouraging me and actually challenging me as mayor to issue an executive order that we would be wearing masks in the city of Baxter. So again, we had a great conversation. I explained to her that basically I'm a vote with a gavel, and we do everything as a group. And I can't think of anything that I've stepped out on a limb without you people, behind me. Maybe cutting the limb off, but normally, behind me. So I said I would not be in a bubble in that scenario. We talked about the cities that have done it, and of course, there were the major ones. And I said, well, we're not St. Paul, Minneapolis, and I said I can't think of any other cities, our size that have done that yet. And the bottom line is, she urged me to. She said, well, would you at least bring it up to the council? I said, yes, I will do that. And so, in second guessing, first of all, whether I would even have the authority to do that, the statutory authority to do that. And again, I wouldn't do it without the support of the council. So I asked Brad to look into it and find out what the legalities are, if that's even a possibility. And so that the answer would be, because I think she might be listening, and that's fine. But I want to be honest about it. What is the answer to that? And so I'm just going to turn it over to Brad and tell us what he found out, what other people are doing, and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you, Mayor. As the mayor alluded, Minnesota statute, in particular Section 12, does give the mayor the authorization or the authority to declare a proclamation of a local emergency, similar to what we did in March. With the commencement of the COVID. But within the statutes, the executive order of the mayor is only in effect for 3 days unless the city council concurs with that by passing a resolution. So if you recall, we declared a local emergency and had the council approve the local emergency at the same special meeting at the end of March. So if the city council was interested in putting together a community-wide mask policy, they would have the authority to do it under the local emergency. The mayor would have, as by state statute, the ability to declare it and impose that for up to 3 days. But if it goes beyond that, it needs the council consent or approval. That being said, the mayor did indicate that the hot spots are the areas in which municipalities have gone in and declared a local emergency and did a proclamation ordering the use of masks in public spaces. Those tend to be larger in size, but they are working their way down. I know Mankato and Rochester did earlier this week. I know St. Cloud will be taking it up for discussion on the 20th. So there is a movement in taking local control in regards to public health. But it comes down to the council. The one thing that I would add as the city administrator is that enforcement would be subjective. Obviously, our local law enforcement would be called upon to be doing this. They do have other responsibilities. As I indicated to the mayor earlier today, I believe that doing it locally does serve a general purpose, but it's a minor scale as to the larger effect. We are only about 13% of the county population. And we do not have a public health division or staff, which is where the leadership should come from in regards to enforcement of a masking policy. So my advice to the mayor and council disagree and want to go forward, and that you have the right to do that, but would be is to look at the county or the state to implement a masking policy.
And you contacted a couple of our surrounding neighbors and what?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor. Did talk with the Brainerd City Administrator and the County Administrator. Brainerd did have a slight a very limited conversation about that yesterday, decided at their meeting, decided not to take any action. And according to Tim Poole, County Administrator, he has indicated that there's not been a push or a call for action at the county level, though he does receive approximately 1 to 2 phone calls a week from concerned citizens.
Okay, thank you. I'm not selling, excuse me, I'm not selling anything one way or the other. I'm just, I made a commitment to this gal that I would bring it up and we would talk about it. I guess I'm in agreement with, I think Tim made the comment too, that it should be countywide and come from people that can deal with it, can have the health departments that we don't have, that kind of a thing. And I would need to know that you people wanted to do this, because even if I did it, I have the authority for 3 days. And then if everybody says after 3 days, no, then why would we even start it? Why would we? It would be so confusing to people, you know, are we doing something or aren't we? And so I think that, and you know, a lot of people I'm sure are looking at our numbers in Crow Wing County, and Roger, you know, that people go, and so. But anyway, I'm doing what I said I would do, so I'm going to throw it out to you people now. What your thoughts and comments are. Not all at once, though.
You broke up there, Mr. Mayor. Were you asking for our comments?
Yes, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Yeah.
Mr. Holman was ready to go. I'll follow you.
Quickly ready to defer to let you go. No, all I was going to say is I'm in agreement with, I think, the staff and mayor's recommendation. One of the concerns I have, you know, I think there's a lot of good science, there's a lot of good research on the effectiveness of masks and what masks do and don't do and levels of quality. So I think there's a lot of good there. But the mandated application and the consistency of it across the board. For example, in our community or communities, I think Brainerd and Baxter ought to be acting the same. You know, if we do those things, maybe even Crow Wing County acting the same, you know, so that we don't have differences in those policies and practices, you know, right across kind of municipal lines that most people aren't even aware of. So I would be supportive of taking a look to wait and see what county and state guidance continues to be, and maybe bring this back if we get new and different information. That's kind of where I am on it, because I'd hate to see one town is this way, another town is this way, and you get up to Nisswa and it's, you know, it really creates a struggle for, you know, and we have a lot of transient, you know, people coming, tourists and people coming through our communities, that I could just see that really being a struggle to try to understand, you know, a mask implementation policy if it's kind of all over the map.
Thank you.
I can follow Mr. Holman quickly. I'd agree with his statement in general that with just us implementing a policy like that, it would be of minimal real effect with the number of people that are coming and going. I do want to mention that I was really thrilled about the Lake Country Cares initiative and the attempt that they made at the branded masks. And I personally bought several and make a point to try to wear them when I'm out in public, in stores, particularly in our city. And I think if people don't want to be forced to wear them by the state or the county or some entity larger than us, probably it would be wise to put up with the discomfort and short-term minor inconvenience of wearing one just for the sake of trying to do our best as a community. But I think as of right now, keeping it voluntary at our level is obviously the wisest thing. And I would just encourage people to support that initiative and kind of get on board and take that as far as we can as a matter of pride in bringing people to our community safely, as a major retail center for this part of the state. And as we mentioned earlier, the gateway for one of the nicest parts of probably the whole country. We want to keep that open and not put ourselves in a position where we end up being forced to be locked down again or have the state impose masks on us statewide, things like that. So I just encourage voluntary use as much as people can tolerate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Connie?
I can agree with what's been said so far. I would hesitate, especially telling locally owned businesses what they have to have their patrons do. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I think just respecting one another, and if some businesses require, then you respectfully wear one or you don't go there. But I would rather take a wait and see approach, I guess, until we hear what's going to come from the county and the state.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
I agree. We need to be part of a overall solution and not an island in the middle of this.
Okay, thanks. And just to clarify, I wasn't making a recommendation either way. I just was fulfilling an obligation, which I had no problem doing. Just get some opinion of what our thoughts were. And again, this answer, will get back to this gal that, yeah, I have the authority for 3 days. And so still got to come back to the council and whatnot. And so rather than be confusing, we should be of one mind and one thought process too. So Chief, you got anything to add there?
Yeah, sorry. My only thing would be, I kind of concur with everybody's thoughts, but it comes from the governor. It comes with statutorily written law that supports us in our efforts. Not that I'm promoting that we'll go out and write all kinds of tickets for people not wearing masks, but I don't know, Brad, if you checked into that, how that would happen at the local level, if we'd have to create an ordinance or what, but I think it just would be a simpler route to follow the guidance of the governor that way too, such as all the other executive orders. They do come with that statutory language that would support us. Thanks.
Thank you. Administrator, got anything else to add, or are we're good?
Nope. On the topic, no, I believe we've discussed everything that you and I had talked about earlier today.
Okay, it's a tough one. We want to be, it's a lose-lose thing in a lot of people's minds. And so it's a tough decision either way. So, but I appreciate you weighing in and being of one mind on this. And so we'll run with that for now and see what happens. Okay, City Administrator.
Yeah, just wanted to, General Cruz might have mentioned it, but there was a project team that consisted of the Conservation Fund, the Nature Conservancy, and Camp Ripley, along with Community Development Director Doty, who did a news press tour, met with Lakeland News and WJJY. And so tonight on Lakeland News, 10 o'clock, there'll be a bit on the Potlatch land acquisition, as well as another snippet with the community focus group that WJJY puts on at the noon hour, and that'll be tomorrow. I believe that's correct. Right, Councilmember Holman? Okay. With that, just two more quick announcements. Dollar Ball, the school district community ed staff commenced Dollar Ball yesterday. So through the month of July, we'll be providing what I'll define as sandlot baseball. Sign up through the school district, and I think 6 and 9 year olds play Tuesday, Thursday, and 10 and above play on Mondays and Wednesdays for the month of July. So providing some type of recreation, albeit modified than what we normally do, but that is up and running as of yesterday. And then last but not least, it is that time of the year for the annual performance review of the city administrator. And I sent an email asking you to have some dates and times that you might be interested in conducting that review. I'd like to have some input back, or do you want me to do a quick doodle poll and get that going and solidify a date through that means?
Thoughts?
I think a doodle poll might work quite well.
Very good.
The only thing that I would ask of council is I know that Councilmember Holman in the past said there are a few meetings that he would prefer. And I think there was a nodding of the heads of many of you that would do so in person, such as budget, kickoff and things of that nature. I don't know if this falls in that category. Under state statute, the review is done in closed session. So not worrying about, we don't need to take into consideration public attendance. So I don't know what your thoughts are, if this would be a Zoom meeting or an in-person.
Your Honor, Council, and Brad, I'm a pretty strong proponent of in-person, especially in this particular case, because we won't have public, so we certainly can meet in a facility without danger of overcrowding or spacing requirements. And my vote or my opinion is that we would meet in person. But I think you'd asked that we submit kind of the review materials. Did you ask that if we had to do that ahead of time or bring them to the meeting? But regardless, I think to me, it's important to, for, this annual review type of conversation to meet in person.
I would agree with that.
Now we got 5. Okay.
Just for the public that's listening, under state statute, the performance review is done in closed session. There's no action taken at the end of the closed session or the review. By statute, council has to provide a written report and announce that at the next regular scheduled meeting. So whatever date we choose, that next meeting, we'll have a summary of the review that will be read aloud. So there is transparency to the process. It's just that there is some due process that is done in closed session. So
We've, not to muddy the water, but we've been told in the past that whether it's closed or not is up to the person. You make that decision. We've had them both ways. You want it closed. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else, Brad? Or
That is all I have.
city attorney?
No report.
Nothing going on. Okay. Well, it looks like we're ready to go. I just I appreciate everybody, your comments, your support of the city, and keep up the good work. And look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Connie, second by Cross. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Cross,
Aye.
Holman,
Yes.
Licio,
Yes.
Tabit.
Yeah.
And Olson.
Yes. All right. Have a great evening.